What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking through literally the most asked question that I ever get on my Instagram, which obviously it's all about abs. So I reckon I get this question almost every single day, and it's definitely something which whenever I put up a transformation picture, people kind of hang on quite a lot, and they ask me, how often do you train them? How did you get them? All those types of things. So that's what this video is going to be about. So let's just caveat the crap out of this video first by just saying that abs are absolutely not the key to your happiness, and it's just so much more to life than abs, and that is not what this video is about at all. It's literally just a video trying to share some of my tips and tricks, genuinely how I've done things, how I do things, and just try and share some of that knowledge, I guess. I really toyed with whether or not to film this video because, as you know, on my Instagram I preach so much about embracing yourself and loving yourself and being strong and healthy and happy, whatever that kind of looks like for you. And I don't ever want it to come across like I'm trying to say to you, you need to look a certain way or you need to be a certain thing or anything like that. But at the same time, I actually feel like this video is going to be pretty good at showing you that there's no fads or stupidness involved here. I'm not going to sit here and say that all I do is drink celery juice and do 10,000 sit-ups a day. Sorry if that's what you thought it was going to be, but it's not going to be that. So it is genuine stuff here. So I hope you guys appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to start by throwing on the screen a transformation picture, which if you follow me on Instagram, you've probably already seen it. But yeah, as you can kind of see, I've been through quite a physical transformation, and I know I try and focus you so much on the mental side of things too, but I can't shy away from the fact that physically my body has completely changed. So that's kind of just a really good indicator that I'm not somebody that was naturally born with abs. I wasn't naturally lean or anything like that. I was just kind of your normal girl, slightly chubby at times. And yeah, this is completely my journey. As you guys know, I'm not a PT or anything like that. This is all kind of from my own experience and what's worked for me, so you're gonna have to excuse if some of the lingo is a little off. So as I kind of just said, those abs weren't a result of millions of hours of sit-ups. They are genuinely kind of a byproduct of this kind of healthy lifestyle that I've been living as a whole. Core training has obviously played a really big part of that, as in it has formed part of my training, but there are all sorts of other factors which have come into play as well. So I'm kind of going to touch on three main things that I think are important to share and just talk around. So the first one's going to be around like body composition and like genetic makeup. The second is going to be around losing fat, and the third is going to be around like training and that kind of side of things. And then kind of towards the end of the video, I'm going to show you some of my favorite core moves and just chat you through them a little bit as I go. So let's actually get into this video. So first up, like I said, I'm going to talk about body composition and genetics. As I do say quite often, we are all really different, and that's why I just really strongly feel like hanging yourself on somebody else's aesthetics is really just not a healthy place to be, because we do all look different, we are all different, and that is what is absolutely the best thing. So it's more about being the strongest, healthiest, happiest version of you, whatever that's kind of going to look like. So obviously, with that being said, as kind of we all have slightly different compositions and slightly different shapes and sizes and all that type of thing, it does also mean that naturally we might look a certain way or excel in certain areas, whereas other people kind of, those areas are trickier, or they hold more fat there, or they're a bit slower to respond, and all those types of things. So for me in general, since I started weight training and since I kind of embarked on this healthy lifestyle, I've actually found that my upper body, my arms and my tummy has naturally seemed to be pretty lean, whereas my lower body has always been a lot slower to respond. It's always held more fat. That being said, you can be the complete opposite way round. So that's just an example of how, for me, that's that's kind of how things have worked. I also think that it's important to say that everyone's abs look different. I think we get really obsessed over having like a perfect six-pack or a certain type of abs, and actually so much of that is down to naturally what shape you have got there. But some people can get ridiculously lean and they still only have like the top two, or they just have really nice long lines, or they have, you know, like the straight six. This is kind of what mine look like. I would say that yours are 100% gonna look different because everyone's looks different. So just removing some of that stress and focus about them being a certain thing and just focusing on strengthening them and all of that, I would say, is absolutely a better place to be. That being said, obviously core training doesn't just form part of my training routine and lifestyle for aesthetic reasons. It is massively to complement the training that I do in general. So when you're doing weight training, when you're doing your heavy compound lifts, when you're using free weights, when you're running, when you're walking, literally pretty much all the time you're moving your body, you are using your core to stabilize yourself. So that's important, that that's strong. Working that is about so much more than just it looking good. Okay, so moving on more to kind of talking around fat loss, because obviously, as you can tell from that transformation picture, it's pretty clear that there's a big difference in kind of body composition and just fat loss in general. I've kind of touched on like the how I did things in terms of my lifestyle as a whole in another video, so I'm gonna try not to make this video really long and get bogged down in that, but I just want to touch on like the headlines and the basics because I think it does help give the bigger picture. So in general, I was eating in a calorie deficit. So that means, to put it quite simply, I was eating less than my body was burning. So I was gradually losing fat. I did that pretty slowly. I did that probably for almost 12 months, but I was kind of dipping in and out of like maintenance calories where I was kind of sitting at an even point. I wasn't losing that whole time. I kind of lost a bit and then was like just coasting really at quite like a happy steady point. As you know from other videos, I did that through a macro based approach, which is what worked for me. It absolutely doesn't work for everyone, as I've said before. For me, it was just an amazing tool to teach me what my body actually needed, what protein, carbs, fats, fiber, calories, all those things actually were. Having come quite dramatically out of like diet culture and things like skinny teas and meal replacement shakes, and just generally feeling like I was always dieting or about to diet or needed to diet, I felt like I just didn't know anything. So for me, that's where macros just helped actually teach me what's in things. And I think if you use it as a tool for education, it can be really good. I think absolutely using it as an obsession and a restriction, which is not what I'm saying. But for me, obviously, I'm just telling you that's how I used it and that's kind of how it worked. I think whether or not you decide to track things, I think just having an understanding of what your body needs in terms of energy for what you're asking it to do in terms of the training and the lifestyle that you lead is really, really important. Whether or not you decide to then eat intuitively to try and achieve that, or whether you want to go down like a more macro based approach, I think it's just important to kind of have an understanding of that. So as you guys know, weight training is my bag. That is how I kind of exercise, that's how I do stuff, and yeah, so that's obviously played a huge part in things. And my training in general has been and is focused around like the key compound lifts. So that's things like your squats, your deadlifts, your military press, your bench press, like those big heavy lifts, and just progressively overloading them over time. Like I said, there's another video where I've kind of talked through like how I pretty much did things and what I transitioned from and how I got started and that type of thing. So I'm not going to go on about that loads, but weight training obviously has played a huge part. Just as well, I think the way that I weight train has played a really big part as well. As you know, I train quite often at our like home gym setup that we've got, which is purely free weight based. So what I mean by that is that I'm using the barbell and I'm using the dumbbells, and I'm not sitting on machines, I'm using those free weights all the time. With that being said, that definitely means that I'm using my core a lot because I'm always standing, I'm always lifting, I'm always just like using my body as a whole. So as well as kind of the weight training side of things, I've also said before that, you know, my kind of cardio regime has been walking. It's been that for over 12 months now, like 14 odd months I would say. I have been religiously using walking as my cardio, and just in general kind of trying to hit like the 10,000 step mark, and just that in general has obviously added to like my energy expenditure. So where I was kind of talking about at the beginning where I was saying like I'm trying to be in a calorie deficit, you're eating slightly less than what your body is burning. That burning, the walking, is kind of contributing to that because obviously you're burning calories when you're walking. But yeah, I still incorporate walking in my routine every single day. So the reason why I've kind of blabbed on a little bit there about fat loss and kind of the difference in fat levels, I guess, between those two bodies of mine is because obviously for most people, for your abs to show, you need to have a level of leanness on your tummy that the muscles aren't kind of being hidden by layers of fat. So moving on now to kind of talk about how I actually train my abs. So I've talked a little bit about like fat loss and how I kind of lost some of the fat, and then I've talked a little bit about like my training in general, but I want to talk now specifically about how I actually train my abs, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions around this. Like I said at the beginning, I literally used to be that person that would do sit-ups constantly because I thought that's what was going to get me abs, and in honesty the last 12 months I haven't obsessed over getting them. I've just obsessed, if you want to use that word again, over my lifestyle as a whole, and I think that just shows that it's all those things combined. Overall, that balance and that lifestyle is for me what I think has made the biggest difference. So in terms of frequency, I like to train them fully, I would say at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. Part of that also comes down to the fact that I really enjoy training them. I often do things where I'm doing them at home on like a Saturday or a Sunday, or like in the evenings when I've got a little bit more time. So I tend to always throw exercises in onto my upper body days as well. So that's something which, as you guys know, Jack is training me at the moment, and he's been doing my nutrition and my training plan, which I've been absolutely loving. So he's thrown in core work onto my upper body days. So a couple of exercises on upper body days, and then usually like one full circuit on a weekend, I would say. I'm definitely a big believer in quality over quantity. It is pointless sitting there and bouncing up sit-ups for like 40 or 50 reps and you're sat there like still bobbing up and down and you're not feeling it. I think finding exercises that you can really feel and connect and engage with your core is really, really important, and that definitely does take some trial and error. Getting your form right as always, and making sure that you're really using those muscles. You're not using your neck or your back or anything like that. You're really just isolating and focusing on your core. So with that being said, my core training tends to be quite simple, as with the rest of my training, where I say I kind of focus on the main things and then build on accessory moves onto there. But in general, I'm always trying to work my abs as a whole. So I'm trying to do exercises which work my obliques, which is the side of my abs, the top of my abs, and the bottom of my abs too. So there's kind of different moves, which I'm going to show you in a second, which kind of touch on those three different areas, and I think it's important to try and train your abs as a whole. I'm definitely not shy to use weight. I do load my abs. It's a muscle. I do still load it. I don't think you need to use much. I personally don't find I need to use much until it absolutely burns like hell. So yeah, I would say not being shy to use weight, but using a weight which still allows you to really contract and feel and engage with the muscle, rather than like loading it and your form goes out the window and it's all just completely pointless. It's also really important to just quickly say that my core in general gets worked every single day in terms of weight training in general. So my heavy compound lifts, like my squats, my deadlifts, like I kind of touched on already, all those moves, you are using your core big time, so it gets a lot of work. So as I'm like doubling up on what I've said here, but just to reiterate again, that is what I think has also really helped, is focusing on those heavy compound lifts and embracing free weights and using my own body and all that type of stuff, where you're really engaging your core and using your core, is definitely what's helped strengthen it. Okay, I think I've chatted enough now, so I'm just going to cut to some footage which shows you guys some exercises which cover those 3 main sections of your abs, and just gives you a bit of a taste, I guess, of what I'm talking about. There's nothing massively frilly in there. There's nothing which you couldn't achieve at home with a couple of pieces of kit. And as you know, I'm just a big believer in doing what you can with what you've got, so hopefully this kind of shows. Okay, I'm going to cut to the footage and then chat over it as I do the moves, and then I'm going to cut back at the end, and yeah. So the first move I'm going to show you is the ab wheel rollout. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you know that this is literally my favorite ab move, and I put it in almost every circuit that I share. So this wheel I actually got on Amazon. You can get them online. They're not very expensive, and I would definitely recommend having one and keeping it at home, because it is such a challenging move to try and master. You can make this slightly easier by getting someone to hold a resistance band around you and kind of taking some of the weight and just not rolling all the way forward. I would definitely recommend trying to master this if you can, and just gradually building up to it. It's a really tricky one, but when you master it, it is an absolutely killer move. With moves like this, I would tend to try and do what's called an AMRAP set. So that's as many reps as possible for either 2 or 3 rounds. That's purely because it's really challenging, and I just want to make sure that I'm completely challenging myself to get as many reps out of it as possible. Okay, so next up we have the classic plank. So this is one of the old faithful favorites which never fails to set your abs on fire, and it is also really scalable to your abilities. So just building up the time, starting from 10, 20, 30 seconds and moving up to 60 when you can feel like you can do it. I would definitely say trying to make sure you get your form right, trying to make sure you get a nice straight line and that your hips aren't sagging. And yes, this is a really good one to perfect and then progress with over time. Okay, so next up we have toe touches, which are a great move to work the top section of your abs. So as you can see, my legs are bent and up in the air, and I am just crunching up as high as I can to try and touch my toes. Really focus on doing these slowly and crunching and really feeling it in your abs rather than rushing through it quickly, and I promise you it will absolutely burn. Okay, so last up we have what is called a Russian twist, or side to sides. There are a few different names for these guys, but basically I'm doing this in the most complicated or the most difficult way first up, where as you can see I have a weight plate in between my hands and I'm going side to side with the weight with my feet off the floor. Now I'm doing it without the weight, where I'm just twisting my body, which is obviously slightly easier because there's no load. And then finally, I'm going to show you how you can also do it with your feet on the floor if you can't quite balance yet with your feet off the floor. In general, this move is really tough, and you can gradually progress to adding weight to then more weight, and it's just a really good move to work the side of your abs. Okay, so those are kind of 4 good moves which work the top, bottom, side and just my abs as a whole. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope it was informative to show you an example of some of my favourite moves. Okay, I hope you enjoyed those exercises, and I hope the audio was okay as well. I've never actually done that before, where I've like voiced over piece of video, so hopefully it comes out okay in the end. I'm praying it does. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative. I hope it lived up to some of the questions that you guys have when you message me on Instagram and when you comment on things. I hope it's been informative, but for the right reasons, and that I've reiterated my point enough about you doing you and you being you. So I'm gonna leave this here. Make sure you hit like and subscribe if you did enjoy, and come and say hey on Instagram because I love saying hello to you over there too. Okay, I will catch you guys in a bit.